Hello everyone, welcome to the lesson 2 of CommVault training session. In this, we will be talking about the CommVault features and the core CommVault technology, or I would say the common technology platform on which CommVault has been built. And we will also try to see what is the need of such a common platform which CommVault refers as modern data management solution. CommVault never refers to their technology as a backup or a recovery software or as an archiving software, but they refer it as a modern data protection or data management platform. There are a lot of backup softwares, archiving softwares available from various vendors in the market, such as EMC, Avamar, Networker, Veritas NetBackup, HP Data Protector. A lot of softwares are there, but why CommVault has been in the Gartner's leader quadrant for last almost 13 years now, and why CommVault is every time making more innovations and why customers are moving towards CommVault. And as we have seen in the industry, the CommVault professionals are offered a much better salary as compared to a Veritas NetBackup administrator or an EMC Avamar administrator. What is the reason behind that, and why should the backup administrators or storage administrators should learn about CommVault and they should enhance their job careers? So this course will actually help you to gain the administration and management skills. At the same time, in this lesson we will be talking about some unique features about CommVault. The first thing that we talk about today, because in today's IT industry the technology is growing and the data is also growing along with that, and the end users productivity is based on the data because we are using data everywhere. Hence, one of the disadvantages is that the legacy backup solutions such as NetBackup or the old Avamar or Networker, those legacy approach are not able to meet the growing storage demands. So this is the first pain point. So due to this rapid change in the technology and the adaptation of technology by the end users, by organizations, CommVault realized that it is time for a new strategy. Instead of only backing up the data, we should be able to manage the data in such a way that we are not only backing up the data, but we are able to access the data, we are able to keep a copy in cloud, and we should be able to retrieve it as and when needed. So some challenges that are faced by organizations today, as most of the businesses are going online, they have a problem in terms of downtime. They cannot keep their services down for a longer period of time because that will impact their business and revenue as well. And also they need to improve the RTO so that they can run their businesses in a smooth manner. Also, as the businesses are more dependent on data, they are unable to afford any data loss, because even a single file loss or a data theft of a small information can have a huge consequences on the business. And at the same time, they need to improve their RPO, which is a recovery time objective. From some of the industry groups or benchmarking entities such as the ISG or the CENIA, which is a storage industry standard organization, they usually predict that on a yearly basis a organization data will grow from 10 to 49%. That means we need to store that data for compliance purpose, for auditing purpose. That means we need more storage. So what happens? So the organizations, they start getting challenges in terms of data management, not in terms of backup or recovery. So if you look at this slide, this is one of my favorite slides that has been there for a long time, since 2007 actually, and this gives you a very clear information about how organizations are having what type of data and how the data is growing. So I always try to use this slide to explain the data management challenges. So let us go into this slide and try to understand. So any common or general organization, you will see they have different types of data such as files, emails, databases, messaging, and web. These are very common types of data that every organization will possess. And the challenge is that it is growing at a plus 50% rate on a yearly basis. So they need to not only back up this data, but they need to also manage this data. So what happens when we talk about managing this data? The first activity that we talk about is we plan to take a backup so that we have a copy of the production data. In case if anything is lost, we can restore it. The second challenge that we try to address is using the replication technology. That means we can replicate a copy of our data from one site to another site to protect from natural disasters and human-made disasters, such as tsunami, earthquake, or war, or a country's economic condition, or those kind of things. The third one that we do is we try to archive the data so that we have a copy for long-term retention, for auditing purpose, or for compliance purpose, or we want to reduce the storage size on the source volume, so we archive the data which is not used regularly. So the infrequent data can be archived to a cheaper storage or to a cloud container or a bucket, so that our source volumes can be maintained and optimized. Then the next step is the migration, because as we know, we have to keep on upgrading the versions of backup softwares, upgrading the storage controllers, upgrade the infrastructure in data center. So we go through a challenge of migration as well. So migration is a very hectic task, and it is also prone to data loss, because whenever we perform a migration, the chances of getting 100% data intact are very less. So there is a possibility that there might be a data loss. So we also face a challenge in terms of migration as well. Now we have some appliance based solutions such as data domain or net backup appliance, which we use for deduplicating the data or to eliminate the duplicate copies. So that might be one more approach where we can use the appliances to manage the data. Now if you look at all these aspects, all the 5 tasks that we are talking about as part of our data management, we are handling the same data again and again. So it is like, we are doing the same task again and again and expecting a different result, right? That is what CommVault's analysis is. And based on this analysis, CommVault has come up with a solution which is a unified data management solution. That means you can manage all these 5 aspects from a single interface using a single platform. And when we talk about these aspects from different vendors, the cost of ownership, the hardware cost, the people cost that are required to manage these different technologies and the consumables will be very high. Right? And every methodology that we are using, such as backup or replication, it has its own user interface, it has its own data mover, every activity maintains its own catalog or indexing. We have to manage the security for each methodology. We need to monitor the jobs for each methodology. So it becomes multiple components that are trying to do the same thing. This is primarily the traditional solutions. Now most of the vendors are also coming up and they are trying to integrate their solutions as one, such as Veritas Net Backup. Earlier they did not had the deduplication part. So they acquired a company called PureDisk and they have integrated that deduplication capability into their Veritas Net Backup now. Right? So those kind of things, all the vendors are now coming up with this unified approach, and Commvault has been the leader, or we can say the first one to come up with this innovative idea. So the traditional solutions does not solve the management headache, and what we are trying to do is we are trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So this is where Commvault, they have taken a paradigm shift approach where using a single interface or a single platform we can perform multiple activities and we can also lower the cost. The first thing what we are doing is we are unifying all these methodologies into one platform. So using a single platform I can do all these options and I can manage my data. And when I am using a single platform, automatically my cost of ownership, my hardware, the people that are required to manage, and the consumable cost will come down. Here you can see a traditional solutions that were earlier offered by different vendors. Especially if I talk about the Veritas, they had PureDisk, they had Veritas Net Backup, they have Enterprise Vault for archiving purpose, right? So now they are trying to integrate these products as closely as possible so that they can offer a unified platform similar to Commvault. So these are some of the challenges with these separate, codes. You have multiple interfaces to manage. You have separate copies of data. You need to have, different setup, support, and upgrade that you have to do for different products. It eventually ends up into high cost. So these are some challenges that are available. And finally, what happens? It becomes a little bit more complicated. So from my experience, I have been using Commvault for the last 14 years. I have worked on Veritas and Avamar as well earlier. I felt Commvault is much simple and ease of management once you understand the concept and once you get acquainted to it. Okay. So let us see what was the approach of Commvault and why they came up with this approach. Now Commvault, they had a single software which was known as Simpana earlier, but now they are just referring it as a Commvault product. So basically Commvault has only one single product, one single technology that is offered to the customers. Now what Commvault has done, their approach, they have created a common platform, and that common platform includes all these features which are required for all the different methodologies that are needed for a data management. Such as if you want to do a backup, you need a GUI interface. For a backup, you need to create a policy. You need to secure your backups. So you need security. You need to schedule your backup jobs. So there is a scheduler that is available. You want to generate reports on your backup. There is a reporting tool that is built into the common platform. If you want to classify your data based on different SLAs, then the classification is there. We need to catalog the backup data so that we can index it and we can quickly search and browse for restore purpose. You want to compress your backup copies so that you can optimize your storage. You can encrypt the backup data for security purpose. You can do deduplication so that you optimize your disk library storage space. You can content the indexing part so that whatever data you are backing up using Commvault, they will be indexed, and you can maintain index repositories in a distributed manner so that you can do quicker search. Finally, you can do media management where you can manage your disk libraries or tape libraries or cloud as well. Now, with the help of these common features, as these are the common features, these common features will allow us to perform all these activities, irrespective whether you are using it as a backup and recovery software, or in future if you want to add a archiving module or replication module or SRM module or search engine. So all these modules that you see here on top, these modules are using the common platform features which are the core offerings of CommVault framework. Hence, it is very easy. A client can start with a backup and archiving module. Later on, when he wants to replicate the data, he can replicate the data. If he wants to do analysis of his data, he can use the SRM, which is a storage resource management feature. If he wants to provide end users the searching capabilities so that the end users can search their own data, they can restore their own data, that can also be done, right? So this is what the common platform features are offered. So when we talk about CommVault software, we can categorize this software as a server, or we can call it as a data model protection, or we can use it as archiving or long-term retention. We can refer it as a deduplication engine. We can also refer it as virtualization. Why we are referring it as virtualization? Because we can also perform P2V migrations as well. I can take a backup from a physical machine and I can convert that into a virtual machine. So I can do P2V migrations, I can do V2V migrations also. So CommVault also supports a lot of migration features on virtualization infrastructure as well. You can also refer it as a snapshot management. It can talk to multiple storage vendors using its IntelliSnap technology, and you can manage all different storage vendor snapshots from a central location. You can also refer it as a data protection for edge and mobile devices. So if you are planning to back up your laptops and desktops, you can do that as well. It has a very comprehensive reporting engine which can be used for generating a lot of detailed reporting. The operations management part, CommVault has a CommCell console which is built in, which is based on Java. I have included a demo of that in the demo section. You can go through that demo. And this CommCell console will perform all the management activities for you. Additional to that, CommVault has also come up with a web interface which is known as On Command Center. That is also very easy to use, and it gives you a cloud platform feel where you can quickly create and back up your virtual machines. Finally, we can do cloud and managed backups as well. You can back up your data from on-premises to the cloud provider, as well as you can configure your entire CommVault implementation as a cloud backup service. You can also white label it, and you can host multiple tenants, and you can offer it as a service to your customers as well. Right? So, moving forward with the architecture of CommVault. So, the architecture of CommVault, let us see the overview and try to understand what are the benefits. Some key terms that are used in CommVault are backup. We can do backup, we can recover, we can replicate the data, we can archive the data, we can search the data, and we can analyze the data. Now, these key terms covers my entire portfolio of data management. So you can see from this one line that with the help of CommVault implementation or with the help of CommVault environment, I can perform all these activities in my data center. Here just to give you a quick glance of what type of data center applications and databases, virtual platform, emails, everything is protected by Commvault. Commvault is protecting all the components that will be available or implemented in a data center. All of this can be protected from a central location, and it can be stored in a central repository, and this repository can allow us to search the data. It can allow us to discover the data. We can use it for legal hold as well. We can also create snapshots so that the snapshots can also be restored in a central location. I can store the data in a disk library or in a tape library or in a cloud as well. So irrespective of where the data is stored, the management part will be centrally managed. So you don't need to worry about different interfaces or different ways of managing things. The advantages of the common platform that we discussed and earlier, the first thing is we are able to get a rapid recovery. Then we are able to handle the data growth. So if I have one CommServe installed, and if I have 10 media agents, and if I have to accommodate some new applications, I can add more media agents into my CommCell, and I can handle the data growth. I can handle the load of my backup as well. It will increase the productivity because using a single console, we are able to easily manage the Commvault implementation. We don't need to learn multiple terminologies or multiple interfaces to manage the entire process. Improves the operation part. So we are not doing the same thing again and again. So that will also improve the operation part, and it will reduce the complexity. So once you understand the interface and which component is where and how to use that component, it becomes more easy to manage the Commvault platform. And of course, as we are using a single platform, the customer will have a cost reduction and cost saving. Let us look at a quick overview of the architecture. So if you see here, we have these production servers here, which are our application and database servers. So using a single management interface, we are going to install the agents on these production servers to protect the data. Then we can set up a media agents, which are also known as the data movers. The purpose of this media agent is to store the data into different disk library or tape library or cloud storage pools. So with the help of this CommServe, which offers us a unified console, an administrator can install the agents on different production servers. You can push the agents. I have included a demo in the demo section on how to install the agents. I have also shown how to install a media agent and how to install a normal application agent as well on Active Directory as well. So please go through the demo section. You will be able to see the demos on how to install different agents as well. So all these components that we see here, starting from the management interface, the production servers, the media agents and the disk library, all of them, they come under the control of CommCell. So basically they are represented as a CommCell. So in a CommCell, you have a CommServe, you will have your media agents, you will have your client systems or iData agents, and you will have your disk library. And from this, we will be able to do all the activities. So the media agents, these are able to do all these activities. So we don't need a separate media agent or a dedicated media agent for each activity. The same media agent can perform all these different activities. So you can use one media agent for backup operation, for archiving operation, for replicating the data, for creating a snapshot as well. Right? So we are using a shared infrastructure, which is a disk or tape, and we can give the data to that disk or tape library and we can store it according to our purpose. Now, what is the benefit that we are getting from this interface? We are able to manage the data at once. We need to get trained at once so that we can manage the entire solution. We don't need to worry about getting trained differently on replication, getting trained differently on backup. The DR design will also be one, because you have built-in CommServe high availability features now, where you can build up a standby CommServe and you can make it highly available. And also, when you are backing up the data, you are indexing at once. The same index can be used for archiving purpose as well. So you are not going to index the data again and again for various operations. So that is also a very good thing. You are not performing the same thing again and again. Right? So with all these features, we are able to get a better return on investment and benefits in terms of total cost of ownership. This is the main reason why customers are moving and migrating from other vendors to Commvault. So let us quickly do a quick recap. So one architecture, that means I am doing a backup, which is nothing but copying the data. I am archiving the data, that means I can move the data. So basically the definition of archive is that when you are performing an archive operation, it will make a copy of your source data to the destination, and then it will delete or replace that source data with a shortcut. So that is what we call it as archiving, moving the data. We can also look at the storage resource management. So you want to know what type of data is stored in your storage systems. So you can do an analysis and you can see how many duplicate files are there, how many large files are there, what type of extension files are being saved. If you want to know if the users are saving video files or AVI files, you will be able to get that information from the SRM module. Snapshot, you can do cross vendor snapshot. Snapshot is nothing but just another backup copy, but not in the form of a traditional backup. We are using a snapshot technique, which is a point-in-time copy, which is an instant backup feature. We can use like Windows VSS or NetApp snapshot or EMC snapshot, because it supports cross vendor. Hitachi, all the vendors are supported by Commvault. Search, you can search for data, whatever data you want to find. If you want to restore a file, but you don't know when the backup was taken of this file, where the file is residing, whether it is residing in a disk library or in a tape library, you can perform a keyword search of that file name or the word that is present in that file, and with the help of the Commvault catalog and indexing feature, we can quickly get that file, and then we can select the file and we can restore it. Deduplication. So with the help of Commvault, we don't need to depend on any hardware appliances such as data domain or NetBackup appliances, because Commvault offers source side deduplication, target side and tape as well. It is part of the solution. You can choose, you can enable it wherever you want to use it. Finally, the catalog. It is a distributed catalog with a scale out design which can grow and accommodate lot amount of indexing and metadata information, which can be quickly searched across the organization for performing e-discovery, legal hold or restore jobs as well. And when you want to restore, as we were talking about restore, Commvault offers you multiple options for restore. If you have taken a full backup from a virtual machine, you can restore an individual file or a folder. You can restore the entire volume, or you can restore the entire container as well. Here you can see the example of the container. You can see the example of an entire volume, or you can see the example of an individual file as well. So with the help of the catalog, it is very granular to browse and select the object that you want to restore. So with the help of this catalog feature, not only you are able to search the data, but you are able to quickly restore only the data that is required to be restored. You can also use it for offline mining as well. You want to restore it in a separate server. I have included one demo as well in the demo section, where I have shown you how you can restore to a different server in a different folder as well. That can be used for offline mining as well. Okay. So now let us quickly understand what is CommCell and try to go into more details so that we can have a clear understanding of the architecture. So when I talk about the CommCell includes main components, such as the first component will be my CommServe. The CommServe will have an SQL database. So when you are installing your first component, which is a CommServe component, an SQL database will also be installed along with it. So Commvault is by default giving a bundle of SQL database. You don't need to worry about the license of SQL because Commvault already has a agreement with Microsoft, and the Commvault license cost already has the SQL built in. So you don't need to worry about the compliance of licenses. Now along with the CommServe component, so when I'm installing the CommServe component, few components will get automatically installed, such as the console, which is a Java based console, a file system agent. So if you want to back up your CommServe itself, you want to back up some important folders in the CommServe, you can perform a backup and restore of the CommServe as well. It will also install a web server and the web console. This web console is the admin console, or I can also call it as command center. So that is also installed as part of the CommServe installation. Now CommServe has this command center, which is giving you a cloud like an interface feel where you can easily protect your data. So a demo is also included in the demo session for the command center or the admin console. Kindly go ahead and you can have a feel of it there. And finally, it will install a component called workflow. This is a built-in workflow engine that is offered by Commvault at no extra cost, and it is used to automate a lot of business activities or a lot of common administrative tasks that you do on a daily basis. If you are doing an admin task on a daily basis, and if you know the procedure, you can actually create a workflow for it, so that instead of you performing it manually, the workflow can run on a specific schedule and it will perform the activity for you. A demo for the Commvault workflow is also available. Please go ahead in the demo section. Then what we have to do is we have to install a media agent, because the media agent is a component which transmits the data from the clients to the backup media. Backup media means your disk library or your tape library. Then we have to install an agent on respective clients from where we have to take a backup of our data. If your client is running an Exchange application, you also need to install an Exchange database agent so that you can protect it in a online manner. Here I have a very simple CommCell setup to show you how the agents are installed and how the components will work. So if you see here, I have a local area network, which is my LAN, and I have some local users such as my laptops and desktops. I have an Active Directory server here. I have an email server, a file server, a database server, right? So these are my normal applications that are available on any corporate organization. And also sometimes customers, they have servers behind the firewall as well, right? So behind the firewall, I have a DMZ zone where I have a web server, I have an e-commerce server. Then I have internet connectivity, I have a remote office, I have a tablet user, I have a mobile user as well. So my objective is I should be able to protect all these different components from a single solution so that I can use it in a easy manner. So let us go ahead and see what can be done. So first what we do is we implement a CommCell server in the environment, which is our first component. And once the CommCell is installed, then I can install a media agent to which a storage or a disk library is connected. So this disk library will be used as my backup device. Now what I need to do is, now using the CommServe and the media agent, I need to communicate with all these servers and clients, and I need to protect the data. So first thing what we do is we install the iData agent. Now since I am running some databases here, I am going to install the iData DB agent. Right? Now this server is a web server, so I am going to install a iData agent, which is a file system agent, to protect the files and folders that are residing on this web server. Same way, the e-commerce server also has some application where it has files and folders. So I will install or push the file system agent so that my CommServe can communicate with these clients using the firewall. Here I have an Active Directory server, so I am going to install an iData agent AD so that this Active Directory agent can understand the Active Directory, Microsoft Active Directory framework, and it can back up the objects accordingly. Then to protect my laptops, I will install the normal iData agent FS, which can be a core or which can be a file system. Then the same way I can install my agents on the mobiles, on my tablets, or on the remote offices as well. The first thing what we have done is we have installed the CommServe. The second thing, we have installed the media agent. The third thing is that we have installed the agents on different production servers which I want to protect. So the moment you install the agents on your clients, they get registered with your CommServe, and the CommServe starts communicating with them to see whether the administrator is creating any subclient to perform the backup of these clients. So what are the requirements for the CommServe? First we have to understand the requirement of CommServe. So here Commvault has given some requirements such as 16.4 and 32 or 64 GB. Now you might say these are a little bit on the higher side. Yes, because we are looking at an example called extra large, where we are talking about backing up 20,000 servers. Right? Now they have various scenarios like small enterprises or medium size as well. If you go to the Commvault website, you will be able to see all these requirements that Commvault is suggesting to have a CommServe which can handle depending on how many servers and how many laptops that you are backing up. So always I suggest to go ahead and look at the Commvault documentation for up-to-date information on the sizing guideline before planning for implementation. Now if you are planning to build your own lab, and you can download the software from Commvault website, as I have shown in my previous lecture, we are okay with 4 CPU, vCPU if it's a virtual environment, and 16 GB memory. So for media agent, also Commvault has recommendations on their website, and based on what type of activity that you are planning to do, whether you want to enable a deduplication on that media agent or no, then you can look at the different components and the recommendations for what type of setup you have. You can consider the requirements. So moving forward, just to understand the media agent movement, so how the media agent is going to move the data. For example, if you see here, we have these clients. So primarily, if you are backing the data from a client, the client must move the data to the media agent. So the client will send the data to the media agent, and then the media agent can store the data to the disk library. Okay. Sometimes what happens, your media agent is also a client. So you have installed it as a SAN based client or as a SAN media server. So you can also send the data. So this media agent can directly back up the data to the locally attached disk library, or it can send the data to another media agent to store the data into the disk library that it owns. So not only the media agent is getting the data from the client, if the media agent is configured in such a way that it can also send a copy of that data to the other media agent also. Now you might say, why should I send the data when I have a local attached disk library? Why should I send the data to another media agent? Sometimes you have a requirement of backing up the data in such a way that you are taking the backup of the client and you are storing it into the disk library as your primary copy, and you want to make a secondary copy. So you don't want the same media agent or the same disk library to hold the secondary copy as well. So what you do is you can send the data to another media agent so that that media agent can create a secondary copy of your backup data. So in case if the primary copy is not available, you can restore the data from secondary as well. If you have a NAS filer, because NAS filers can also have a direct connectivity to the disk library or to the tape library if you configured them as a NDMP. So if your NAS filer supports NDMP, then a media agent can be used to send the data directly to the disk library, or the NAS client can send it to the media agent, and then the media agent can store it into the disk library. So the purpose of giving these various examples is to show that how the media agent handles the data from clients. When it is receiving data from the clients, it is going to transmit it to the disk library and apply the retentions that are required. Now coming to the agent. So when we are going to install the agent, with the help of agent, we spoke earlier that it is going to register itself with the CommCell, and the CommCell will know that I have a client where the agent is installed and I have to protect this client data. So what are the considerations for the client? Different for every agent. So if you have a Exchange server or SQL database or Oracle, the agent will be different. So with the help of this agent, we can see the application version, we will be able to see the application patch level, we will be able to see the service account that we can use for proper permissions and for performing the backups. So this agent is not only helping us to communicate with the CommServe, but it will also help us to take a application aware backups as well. So moving forward, the next topic is the CommCell deployment. I have a demo of the CommCell deployment in the demo section. So I will not spend here a lot of time. I will quickly take you through a few things. First thing is we need to download the software. We can go to the software CommVault maintenance advantage side, or we can go to the cloud services, and we can choose the appropriate service pack or the version that we want to download, and we can download the software. And then after downloading the software, what all we need to do? The first thing is we need to do that we have to validate the hardware to make sure that we have enough CPU, memory and disk space to complete the installation. Then we proceed with the CommServe server installation. Then we configure the DR backup jobs, because we have to protect your CommServe database as well. Then we will configure the software updates. If we need to install additional media agents, we can push the media agents. then we will configure the disk library, we will configure the client groups, then we configure the policies, then we look at how to configure global filters, and then we finally configure the agents on remote clients to protect them with the help of our CommVault platform. Now, all these topics are also covered later in theory as well as in demo. So do keep an eye on the demo section. So starting with the deployment, first what we need to do is we need to plan before deployment so that we have enough information at our hand. Because we are going to install an SQL database, we need to understand where the SQL can be installed, where the database files can be kept. Do not install CommVault in C drive, which is a default path in your production. And do not install your SQL path, or don't give the path of SQL as C drive, because it might grow very huge depending on how the size of the CommCell environment is there. So as a best practice, always try to avoid the C drive for installation purpose. Go and change the location of the installation paths to a different drive that is coming from a storage or from a which has a lot of space. So here you can see the example. You can see these are the different components that are required to be configured. So you need to give these drive letters, these paths. This is the install directory. This is the CommVault SQL directory. This is the software directory. This is the DR share. This DR share should be kept on a network share, so that if your CommServe production CommServe goes down, if you want to rebuild a standby CommServe, then you can access the network share to use this DR file for restoring the purpose. Software cache, always try to give it on a different drive, because depending on what type of applications or agents you are using in your environment, this software cache can also grow to a good amount of space. The installation is quite simple. During the installation, once you start the installation, it will ask you for the options that you want to choose. So already I have included these steps in a demo. So you can see those demos and you can have a quick look on how to install. So during the installation, what happens? CommVault will automatically install the IIS server. Why it is needed? Because we are going to use the command center or the web console for web interface. So we need a IIS web server that can be running in the background. Then whatever packages we select, CommVault will prepare to install those, and then we have to provide a installation directory path, a database directory path, and a DR directory path, as we discussed in the previous slide. Then we need to configure the database settings. Now this database settings, if it's a new installation, you can just select configure a new database, and CommVault will configure the SQL database by itself. If you are trying to connect to an existing SQL database where CommVault was running earlier, then you have to do some configuration. Then finally you have to configure an admin account. You have to give the credentials and the password for admin, so that using that admin, once the installation is done, you will be able to log in. Okay. This is the screenshots of your database. So you can give the path of your DR path file. You can give your client information. Always try to give fully qualified domain names, DNS, or give IP address, because using a DNS or a fully qualified domain name will have less host name conflicts. Then select the create a new database if it's a fresh install, or use a existing database if you are going to use it for staging or DR purpose. Then provide your credentials. These are the credentials that you should provide or use when you have downloaded your software. And finally, once the installation is completed, you will see your web link if you want to use the web link, or you can click finish and you can launch your CommCell console. Right? So after the installation is done, what we need to do, step 1, we need to register the license key. If you are setting up your own lab for your practice, you can cancel this registration part. It will give you a 60 days trial period, so that till 60 days you can use it and you can practice it as well. Then we have to configure the software cache and we have to update the CommVault so that we make sure that we are running the latest hotfix in our environment. Then we have to configure the DR backups, and for configuring the DR backup you should have at least one storage disk library. So there is a demo as well where I have shown how to configure the disk library and the software cache as well. And finally, if you want to get email alerts, you can configure the email settings so that you can get the email alerts. Now coming to the licensing part, so if you are running it in a production environment, CommVault is always binding your IP address with your CommCell ID. So you need to send your IP address to CommVault so that they can generate the license key where your CommCell will be binded with your IP address. So you need to send that email to prodregistration@commvault.com. Now what type of licenses can you purchase? You can purchase a standalone license, so that you will get a single license for your CommServe, or you can purchase a dual license where you get a license for production CommServe IP address as well as a standby CommCell IP address. So when you order a dual IP license, you have to provide the IP addresses of both your production and your standby CommServe so that CommVault can bind it and give it to you. You will be getting the license keys in the form of an XML file via email. That file you have to apply it. So once you have entered the license keys and your production environment licenses are proper, then what we do is the next step is we have to update the CommServe database so that we have the latest hotfix. Now CommVault has a scenario where on a quarterly basis they release a service pack and they release a hotfix to address some critical issues. Now these hotfixes might come within a month period of a time or sometimes very frequently as well, depending on the criticality of the issue. Now the cache that we update, we can download the cache software directly from the CommVault cloud account into our local cache. So when I have a local cache on my CommServe, that is known as my primary location. So my CommServe will hold the local cache, which is a primary cache location. If I want to have a secondary cache location or I want to distribute it to different remote sites, I can also set up a remote cache location as well. If I don't want these clients to directly get update from CommServe in terms of their hotfixes, I can make this client as a remote cache client so that these clients will actually get the data from here. And of course, this client will keep on syncing with the CommServe. So with the help of the remote cache, you can actually reduce or manage the traffic hitting directly to the CommServe. So you're not burdening the CommServe with a lot of update activity. And when we talk about update activity, you can configure your clients to get updated on an automatic basis or on a manual basis as well. So you can choose how the clients will get updated. So this is the steps of how to configure the main software cache. Once you open your CommCell console, you can go to your add and remove programs here, and here you have the software cache configuration. When you click on that, you will get this window open where you can give the path of your software cache directory. So here it shows as C, but as a best practice, do not keep it on C in production environment. And then you can also configure a remote cache. So in the same window, same tab, you have an option of remote cache tab. So if you go to that remote cache tab, there you can add a remote cache details where you can mention which is the client which will be acting as a remote cache, and then you can select the location of that and you can define the clients how they can be updated, whether you want it to be updated on a automatic or a manual basis. For downloading the package and making sure that you have always the updated software, again you can go to add and remove programs. You can go to your download software option, the tab will open and you can run it as a job. Now before running it as a job, if you want to select few platforms, whether you want to install or download only Windows or you want to download only Linux packages, you can choose that and you can install it. Then comes the DR backup. So here you can configure your DR backup. CommVault already has a default schedule where the CommServe DR backup is performed on 10 AM as a default time. And what it does, basically it has three phases. The first phase is it will back up the local SQL, that is a local SQL database running on the CommServe. So it will back up that SQL database and then it will export that file as a DR location. So as we discussed during the installation, you should give a DR path. So that DR path is nothing but on a network location. So once the export is done, then it will perform a backup and send that backup to the disk library where you have designated it to go. You can change the settings of the DR backup set. You can also send the DR backup to cloud as well. So CommVault offers their cloud services where you can put a copy in the CommVault cloud as well. So this is the process of how the backup happens. So first thing what it does, the production server, once the schedule kicks in, whatever the metadata that is cached in the DR folder, right? So it will take that information and then that information is exported to a network share, right, on a network share, and after that it will perform the backup of your SQL database to a disk library or to a tape library so that you can protect that data. And on the standby CommServe, if you want to restore that data, first thing what you need to do is from the standby CommServe you need to access this share, because this share the file will contain all the information about the metadata information at that particular point in time and which information and where it is backed up. And once the file is accessible, then it can tell you that the disk library where it is stored and you can store the CommServe database. So the schedule is there, the default schedule. So you can go to your schedule of your CommServe and you can click on edit and you can edit the schedule and you can select whether it should be running on which schedule, and you can make it as a full backup, or you want to change the frequency of the schedule. You can do all these changes. To see the storage policy which is associated with your CommServe DR, you can go to the storage policies here, and under that you can see the disaster recovery policy and you can see the retention as well, how many days it is retaining the copy. So with the help of this you will be able to see where your DR backups are residing for CommServe. Here you can do a lot of configurations. I mean, there is a utility called DR backup. If you go to this utility DR backup, you can configure a lot of options here where you can say how many number of exports to retain, define the user account that you want to use, or you can also enable VSS because it's a Windows server. You can export it to a network share. You can upload it to a cloud if you want. So you can do all these configurations from the DR backup option that is available in the control panel. If you want to get alerts via email, you can configure your CommServe to receive alerts via email. So you can configure an email server, SNMP, SMTP, and you can send the reports and alerts to the users as well. One very important thing about media agent is the index directory, because as we discussed earlier, every time you perform an operation, Commvault will create an index, and the default location of that index directory will be where you have installed your media agent packages. So you can actually go there and you can change that for optimal performance. You can move that from the GUI as well. So you can go to your media agent properties and you can move the directory. So here you can see some options and steps. So first you go to the media agent in your CommCell browser, you go to the properties, and then what you do is you change the location and you can select which location is appropriate based on the available space, and then you confirm it saying that yes, I want to change the location of the index directory. And once the change is made, you can see that the index migration job will start in case if it is not a new media agent. Sometimes what happens, you are running the media agent for more than 1 year and already a lot of index has been created in that location, and when you are moving the index from one location to another location, Commvault make sure that it will migrate those indexes to the new location also, so that you don't have any index information loss. So this completes our lesson 2, and there are a lot of demos that I have created for the topics that I have discussed in lesson 2. So kindly go ahead and look at those demos as well. Thank you.